In the heart of Phoenix, a chilling and haunting tale unfolded, one that baffled investigators and left an entire city in turmoil for over 2 decades. 2 vibrant young women were brutally murdered in 1992, their bodies discarded in canals. The gruesome details of the attacks pointed to a cold and calculating killer, someone clever enough to evade capture for years. But it wasn't just their deaths that shocked the community. It was the horrifying possibility that the predator was still living among them. With no concrete leads, the case went cold, leaving the victims' families in agony and countless questions unanswered. However, in an unexpected twist, the truth was finally unveiled thanks to a groundbreaking tool: forensic genealogy. Join us as we uncover this dramatic story together. On November 8, 1992, Angela Brosso, a 22-year-old technical worker who had recently moved to Phoenix, Arizona, went out for her usual sunset bike ride. Like many locals, she enjoyed cycling along the city's canal paths. Her boyfriend Joe said Angela left their apartment around 7 p.m. while he stayed behind to bake a cake for her upcoming birthday. Joe expected her to return quickly, but as hours passed without her coming back, he grew increasingly worried. That night, Joe took his bike out 3 times, frantically searching for Angela along the canal paths. He called Angela's friends and even her mother in Pennsylvania, but no one had heard from her. Eventually, he reported her missing to the police. The following morning, searchers found Angela's torso in a field near the bike path. She had been fatally stabbed. About 10 days later, a fisherman discovered her head snagged on a metal grate. Angela's purple mountain bike was nowhere to be found. The case stalled due to a lack of leads until September 1993. Melanie Burness, a 17-year-old high school student, failed to return home past her curfew, and her mother noticed her bike was also missing. By 10:30 p.m., Melanie still hadn't returned. Her mother, panicked, called her daughter's friends, but they assumed Melanie had gone out and forgotten to ask for permission. Early the next morning, a mother cycling with her daughter along the canal encountered a large puddle under a highway underpass. As she rode through, water splashed onto her, but she noticed a strange smell. Upon closer inspection, she realized it was a pool of blood with drag marks leading to a nearby tree. The marks continued around the tree and into the canal. The woman returned home and called the police. Later that evening, police discovered a woman's body in the canal, close to where Angela's head had been found months earlier. The next day, they identified the victim as Melanie Burness. Investigators suspected Melanie was targeted and stabbed from behind by the same perpetrator who had killed Angela. Evidence suggested that the killer approached both victims from behind. The stab wounds were in the same location on their bodies, and both women had been sexually assaulted. The precision and lethality of the first stab wound to the back of each victim led police to theorize that the murderer might have surgical training. A comparison of the DNA recovered from Melanie and Angela's bodies revealed a match. This confirmed to authorities that they were hunting the same killer. The 2 horrifying murders caused widespread fear in Phoenix. Parents forbade their children from going out after sunset, and residents followed the news and newspapers daily, hoping the authorities would catch the killer soon. However, over 2 decades passed with no significant progress in the case. In 2014, Phoenix police met a forensic genealogy researcher from California at a DNA conference. Colleen Fitzpatrick, the founder of the genetic genealogy company identified as International, offered to assist law enforcement. Colleen used the Y chromosome DNA from the 1992 crime scenes to build genetic profiles and cross-referenced them with public genealogy databases. This search produced 6 results, all linked to the surname Miller. Reviewing records, police identified Brian Patrick Miller, a 42-year-old man living in Phoenix, as a potential suspect. His name had been part of the initial investigation into the case, but did not stand out at the time. Brian had a criminal record dating back to when he was just 16 years old. In May 1989, he had stabbed a woman in the back without provocation while riding the same bus as her. He was charged with aggravated assault and sent to a juvenile detention facility until he turned 18. While Brian was in custody, his mother searched through his belongings and found a note he had written. The note detailed plans to abduct women, tie them to his truck, rape them, kill them, and dismember their bodies. Alarmed, his mother took the note to the police. When Brian was released on his 18th birthday, his mother told the police that she feared for her safety and would not allow Brian to return home. As a result, after his release, Brian moved into a transitional facility for newly released inmates. When police revisited the note in 2014, they discovered that many details closely resembled or matched what had happened to Angela, including descriptions of the crime. To confirm whether Brian was the killer, police needed a sample of his DNA. In December 2014, they began surveillance on Brian and devised an elaborate plan. Brian was a single father to a 15-year-old daughter and worked as a warehouse employee at Amazon. An investigator approached Brian at his workplace, posing as a security solutions consultant. The investigator claimed that a nearby warehouse had been broken into and offered Brian a job as a security guard for the building, promising $20 per hour. On January 2, 2015, the investigator met Brian at a restaurant to fill out a job application. A covert police team closely monitored the meeting, prepared to collect any items containing Brian's DNA, such as utensils or a drinking glass. Brian arrived at the restaurant with his daughter, ordered a hamburger, and took a sip of water from a glass. After Brian left, police immediately retrieved the glass and sent it to the crime lab. 11 days later, results confirmed that Brian's DNA from the glass matched the DNA found on Angela and Melanie's bodies more than 20 years earlier. Brian was arrested hours later and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of Angela and Melanie. Brian's ex-wife, Amy, revealed disturbing details about his violent past. Amy was only 19 years old when she met Brian in 1996. They married less than a year later and moved to Washington State. Amy stated that Brian had confessed to killing a young woman in Phoenix years earlier. She never reported this to the police as she was unsure if it was true and was also afraid of Brian. According to Amy, Brian told her that a teenage girl had randomly shown up at his doorstep and he dragged her inside and killed her. Brian claimed to have dismembered the victim's body and disposed of it in trash bins by the roadside. He did not reveal the victim's name to Amy, but police used her account to link the information to Brandy Myers, a 13-year-old girl. Brandy disappeared on the evening of May 26, 1992, 6 months before Angela was murdered. She had left her home alone to go door-to-door collecting donations for a school reading competition. At the time, Brian was living in a transitional facility for released inmates near Brandy's neighborhood. She was last seen walking in the direction of Brian's residence. Despite extensive police searches, Brandy's body was never found. With only Amy's testimony, police did not have enough evidence to charge Brian in connection with Brandy's disappearance. Brian had also been accused of stabbing a woman from behind in 2002. He was charged with first-degree assault with a deadly weapon and was detained for 7 months, but was later acquitted in court due to insufficient evidence. Amy recounted that Brian became frighteningly different after his release, exhibiting dark sexual perversions and ugly behavior she had never seen before. She divorced him after 8 years of marriage. In October 2022, during Brian's trial for the murders of Angela and Melanie, his defense attorneys made a surprising admission that their client committed the crimes, but claimed he was legally insane. They argued that Brian had suffered severe mental and physical abuse from his mother, a prison guard, starting at the age of 5, which they said led to his violent sexual behavior. Brian's mother passed away in 2010. The defense stated that Brian developed severe mental health issues after his mother exposed him to violent and pornographic material. A psychologist testified that Brian suffered from dissociative amnesia, an inability to recall traumatic events. The attorneys argued that Brian had no memory of the 2 alleged murders. However, prosecutors pointed out that Brian could remember details of other incidents where he had stabbed women. After a 6-month trial involving 36 witnesses, the judge ruled that Brian was guilty of both counts of first-degree murder. During the sentencing hearing in June 2023, the judge acknowledged that Brian had endured proven abuse at the hands of his mother during childhood. However, The judge stated that the nature of Brian's crimes warranted the death penalty. Brian's legal team has filed an appeal. What do you think about today's case? Please leave your comments below so we can discuss it together. Don't forget to support us with a like and subscribe to the channel to motivate our team to bring more dramatic cases. And that concludes today's case. Thank you, dear viewers, for watching. Goodbye, and see you next time.